It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Tuesday, March 26th. Your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that is ready for the New York Rangers, but are the Flyers.
It's a great question.
Your Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, and thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. You can find me on Twitter at rmiriam. I'm here as always with Russ Cohen, who's on all your favorite social media apps at Sportsology. We are at Locked On Flyers on Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and Twitter as well. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. You can find our show over on YouTube or on the SiriusXM app or anywhere you listen to podcasts. You'll subscribe to get our latest episode as soon as it's available here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The Flyers do indeed face the New York Rangers tonight. Plus, we've got our Phantoms Tuesday report. Lots of intrigue going on there. But with an off day yesterday, it gave people an opportunity to talk a little bit more about Flyers goaltending and speculate about Aleksei Kolosov. And I think there's just no news now, right?
No, I mean, there was some news a couple days ago from the GM saying, yeah, he's going to be great when he goes, and I'm sure he'll love it. And you can't hang every day, hang on that information, because then there's people figuring out, well, if you put in his visa for then, it should be cleared by now. Again, you don't know. There's things going on there. Things are in flux. He may come over, he may not. It's really that simple. And the problem is, even if he comes over, he has no communication with these players. It's not going to be like he's going to walk in there and just strap it on and replace Sandstrom, or even start in Lehigh. It will take a week or more for him to get used to the players here before they even put him in a game. And, again, smaller ice. There's a lot of things that I don't think people are taking into account.
Yeah, I just think it's something you monitor, and I'm sure they have plans for whatever scenario pops up for this year and for the off season. I think that's more of the issue, right? Is how do you
Yes.
handle it in the off season? And what happens this year, honestly, is not a huge factor for the
No, if I'm the
Flyers.
GM, I'm like, let's get him over here for rookie camp, get him used to
Yeah,
everybody, and get him used to the staff at that time.
absolutely. In the meantime, the Flyers in Madison Square Garden tonight, and the Rangers have won both matchups this season against the Flyers. Of course, there's the traditional Black Friday game. The Rangers won that 3-1. The Rangers won 2-1 back in late February, and that one still stings a little bit, mostly because of the Matt Rempe situation, which
Right.
we will get into for sure. But um, you know, since then, Jacob Trouba is still hurt. Eric Gustafson was day to day as of yesterday, so we'll see what happens there. Ryan Lindgren had been out, but was at practice on Monday and skated.
Yeah, he's still
Uh,
not going to play, though.
yeah, I mean, we'll see, but I don't think so based on
Yeah, and
what
Truber, they're just sort
Abby
of
said.
resting. Yeah,
Yeah.
they don't want they're taking it real slow with those guys. They may come in for the game before the playoffs, the last game of the season. It's going to be something like that. They're strategically doing that. They're getting by with the defense they have. Zach Jones is doing pretty good.
Right.
What's changed for them and why they're on this winning streak is their goaltending has definitely picked it up, but they also Artemi Panarin has really just skyrocketed. For all the struggles Mika Zibanejad is having, he's not having any, and he's gotten, I think, 99 points. He's going to get 100. He'll be like the sixth Ranger to do it. Whenever he does it, he maybe do it against Flyers, maybe he doesn't. But you have to watch him, and they're going to certainly try and feed him in that game.
Yeah, absolutely, and he, has success against the Flyers,
He does.
historically, so we shall, see how the Flyers decide to handle him as far as coverage and
Yeah, and
matchups and all that,
Kreider's
especially.
been a little off his game, and he always does well against the Flyers. He's told me a few times that he really gets up for those games. So he's another guy. The thing that makes him difficult to the Rangers difficult to handle is they have a grind line, so they have that right. They've got strength and whatever they can get to the
Yep.
net. They've got guys that will get in front of the net on the power play like Kreider. They have a really good power play with two power plays full of good shots, and then they're trying those stretch passes with Panarin 3, 4 times a game. So there's not like one pattern. And this is a game where I don't think the shot blocking is going to be the winner here, because if you don't stick with these guys, they're going to do something else because they can.
Right, and I think, the challenge for the Flyers here is they're on the road, and so they don't have last change, and so
Right.
the matchups are going to be so difficult to
Hmm.
get right in this game, given the offensive firepower that we just talked about and, the problems that the Flyers have had with Panarin, in particular. I think that, it'll be difficult, and then, I do think it'll be a challenge for, the younger Flyers defensemen here who haven't had to. I mean, they've been facing tough teams, don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
but this particular team in Madison Square Garden, I think is going to be a really good test for Addard and Ginning, right?
Yeah, it'll be a great test for them. Whichever line they go up against, it's going to be tough. The Rangers do have size and speed. So yeah, it'll they're gonna have to really get the puck out quick. But the Flyers are gonna need to hold on to the puck. Again, to me, doesn't matter how many shots you have, high danger chances are nice, but if you don't get multiple chances or you don't hold on to the puck for any amount of time in the other's offensive zone, you're giving them an edge. And I just feel like they need to control the puck more besides trying to control the tempo of the game. Like they're trying to do that against teams, but this team can keep up skating wise too.
Yeah, I think that will be a huge factor there. Interestingly, I pulled some stats, since February 1st, because
Hmm.
again, I like to look at more recent trends, but have
Right.
a certain level of data. The Rangers power play is 18th in the NHL in that period. And with the Flyers penalty kill, I think showing a little bit of cracks in it. I think this is going to be especially important, A, to stay out of the box entirely if possible. But B, I think that they're going to have to tighten up a little bit, just because I think this could be something that the Rangers are looking for in terms of getting a little bit more success that on their power play as they are accustomed to, but haven't had as much as of late.
Yeah, that's interesting that you pulled that. I do think that's a key thing because yeah, the Flyers PK has definitely dipped, and Mika Zibanejad has not been himself, so they might try and get him a few more pucks to get him back on track. And so, yeah, it is going to be kind of like who's going to bounce back first to what they were before, because usually things do bounce back in those situations. The only thing that doesn't bounce back is the Flyers power play, but
Right.
that's a side point.
Well, the Rangers penalty kill is 3rd in the league. So,
Yeah, yeah,
it's, uh,
yeah. That's a
uh,
tough matchup.
right. But also interestingly, in that period, the Flyers face-off percentage is above 50%, which shocked me,
Yeah,
honestly. It's just a hair above 50%, but it is above 50%, and the Rangers are 49.2. And this is where I think, having Couturier in the lineup is gonna be very important. Having Frost in those key positions and keeping that line together, uh, that has been successful as of late, right?
yeah. I mean, I love Frost, but I don't know if you're putting him up against Trocheck. Trocheck is a face-off machine, and he's taken most of them. Like even Zibanejad doesn't take nearly as many, even though he's the number one. I can't see the quotes. Number one center. So, I think it's an issue where yeah, you've got to match Trocheck, and if you really want to do that, listen, put Couturier in there for the face-off, then take him off the ice if you want. But I
Right.
mean, and again, you can't expect Frost and um,
Paling.
Paling to try and really match up that way. That's a lot. That's really asking a lot.
Yeah. One of the other factors here is that the Rangers haven't played since Saturday, which, they've got had an extra day of
Yeah.
rest where they beat Florida in the shootout. I would think that Shesterkin would play just because he's had plenty of rest. But that being said, there is the quick factor here, right?
There is the quick factor. Yeah, I was just looking to see one more thing on Trocheck, and yeah, defensive zone faceoffs are really tough against him. That's a key thing to watch. As far as quick goes, yeah, he's 4 wins away from tying John Van Beesbrook for third all time on the American goalie list. Like, look, I thought he was washed up coming into this season. He was off his game for the last couple of years. He's really gotten it back. I think it's partially because of him, partially because of Benoit Allaire, their goalie coach, who's really the longest running assistant coach in the league or associate coach. So Quick could definitely be in there because I think towards the end of the season they're probably going to be looking to spell Shesterkin a little bit. And since he played in the shootout, yeah, they might be easy on him and give him that game, and then Shesterkin will play against Colorado and Arizona, and there's days in between. But I could see Quick getting this one if they just wanted, because he's on a really good run himself, and that kind of keeps him in it too.
Yeah, and then finally, we had talked earlier that they might put Delorier back in for this game
Yeah,
because of the Matt Rempe factor. I just think that, like, getting baited in this game on either side, honestly, just doesn't do anybody any good at this point.
it doesn't. And like we were saying offline, the Rangers are kind of like they're definitely asking Rempe to fight less, but it doesn't mean he's going to hit less. So,
Right.
based on what we saw last game, though, where I thought the Flyers just way overdid it as far as extracurricular stuff, if they're going to do that, then you're basically going to flip that switch for Rempe too. And who knows what happens with this game as far as that goes. But honestly, the Flyers can't afford to get anybody else hurt. And so if he
Yep.
freight trains somebody, is that really in your best interest? Because we
No.
see that some of these guys are banged up. Konechny has definitely got banged up last game. Sanheim took a couple of point blank shots. Like, I don't know. I don't think you. So I think you're right. I think even, and I'm sure Delorier is going to be in there, but I wouldn't tap him on the shoulder early. I would just wait a while and see how the game goes first. Don't take
Yeah,
yourself out
just
of it.
see what the tone is first
Right.
before you like jump the gun on that. All right, we've got a ton more to talk about on today's show. It is Phantoms Tuesday, and there's some interesting developments there. We'll get to that coming up next.
It's an important point in the season, Flyers fans. The team is in the thick of the playoff hunt, but regardless of where we are in the current standings, I want to remind you that you can win big by playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is our number one choice for daily fantasy sports and especially daily fantasy hockey. Because with Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. Fans can also play daily fantasy NFL, NBA, and MLB, plus college football, and they're in season on Sleeper, and entries can be made in under a minute. All you have to do is pick whether NHL superstars like Connor McDavid, Nikita Kucherov, or Nathan McKinnon, or Flyer standouts like Travis Konechny will record more or less than their Sleeper projections for things like goals, assists, saves, plus minus, and more in a given game. To win 100 times bet on Sleeper, you need to correctly predict the outcome of 8 player stats. You heard me, Flyers fans. You can win 100 times your money playing daily fantasy hockey with Sleeper, so start paying attention and nail your picks so you can start winning big. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability.
On tomorrow's show, of course, we will talk about tonight's matchup against the New York Rangers. Plus, we will answer your mailbag questions as we do on Wednesdays. You can email us at lockdownflyers@gmail.com, send us a message on Twitter, or comment on our YouTube channel. So the Phantoms this week, they had a Wednesday game and then played Saturday and Sunday back to back. One win and two losses, which is not ideal for this time of year, given how close they are in the playoff race down in the AHL. Now, despite the fact that they did not have an overall successful weekend, they have gotten extremely lucky in the fact that Springfield is just collapsing.
Right.
And so the fact that their one win this weekend was against Springfield, who is running into all these problems, kept them in that sixth place spot. So they are still currently in a playoff position.
Yeah.
um, but the unfortunate part is that they lost to Bridgeport, who is the only team below them, or one of the teams below them, and the worst team in the AHL overall. So it's it's like in terms of trends, it's not great, but they are still in that playoff spot.
Yeah, they're still in it. You hate to be in it this way though. Like just hanging in it, you'd like it to be a little bit more emphatic and them take a, really like, have
Yeah.
some distance so you can feel good about things. But honestly, things are really in flux down there. And this is what happens to, an AHL team when the NHL team has injuries and they're in a hunt like this. So
Yeah.
they need some of the guys. But this is also where the coaching has to really come through on the AHL level to get these other players up to speed as quick as they can and get them in there.
Yeah, and that's what's so, I think, frustrating for me is that earlier in the season your lineup is more stable overall. Like there's this sweet spot in the AHL season where things are pretty solid, and that's where you got to rack up the points because everybody knows that later in the AHL season, you have injuries in the NHL, so there's call-ups. You have injuries on your own team and things are a lot more in flux, and it's hard to really kick things into gear when the lineup is changing every game.
It's true. And, for someone like Tuomaala, uh, who's really been ice cold, it's hard. You're on first line, you're on third line. I don't understand this why Furry and Gardner have to be on the first line. I don't get that.
Well, honestly, they've been playing well, and
No, I know, but you're also a developmental thing too, where if you Denoye is just slipping out of the consciousness of this whole team, and it's a worry. It's a worry beyond this year because Denoye was really good last year. He doesn't even resemble the same player.
yeah, and I think that there are two things going on. I think that the line, since Tanner Lazinski has come back, that line with Brooks and um, Cooper Marody are it is a really, really good line and has
Sure.
been successful over the past several weeks, so they don't wanna break that up, and so
Okay.
the next best players on the team right now in terms of consistency are Gardner and Furry, and so that's why Tuomaala is on the line with them, in my opinion, and I think that's why that is. Whether it's the right thing for Tuomaala, I don't know in the grand scheme,
It
but in
doesn't
terms
seem
of
like it's the right thing.
yeah, I just don't know they know what to do to get him going at this
Right.
point
It's
because
not like it's more of a in your
yeah.
face kind of line than a skilled kind of line. And honestly, Tuamala needs to be with other skilled players, not more skilled players. I'm not trying to denigrate
Yeah,
anybody here, but it's a different kind of player that he needs to be with.
right, and I think that, some of the skilled players are struggling. You mentioned
Yeah.
Elliot Denoye, he's been struggling. JR Avon has been struggling. In fact, he was on the fourth line and they healthy scratched him one game this weekend because he's just not been able to put complete games together recently. And I think, that plus having Lixel called up, they just haven't, and Brink isn't there. I just think that they're struggling to put lines together that are gonna be as consistent as that. And so you look at this past weekend, and Adam Brooks is the hot hand. He's got 5 goals and 5 assists in his last 5 games. That's unbelievable, right?
Yeah,
He
he's a
and
great player at that level. He is. I remember him with the
right.
Marlies. I mean, he really is.
Yeah, he really is, and he had a goal in each of the 3 games this weekend, despite the team going 1 and 2, but, like, Adam Brooks isn't gonna carry you through, right? And
No,
so
and that's where you have to spark some of these other guys.
mhm.
And again, like Zayd Wisdom is just fallen off to the point where I'm not sure what he is.
Well, I think that interestingly, this past weekend, Zayd Wisdom played really well. I think he is kind of putting it together a little bit, but they haven't quite figured out a spot for him with the current lineup as it stands that will put him in the absolute best position. But he has shown some really good hockey smarts, I think, that had been missing. He was kind of all over the place earlier in the season, so
I mean, he's only
I
averaging 10 minutes of ice time though. 10
yeah,
minutes.
I
Like, what could he
know.
really do?
Well, I think he got a little bit more ice time than usual
Yeah.
this past
Yeah.
weekend, but that's what I'm saying is that there's some sparks there, and so I think all is not lost when it comes to Zayd Wisdom. But again, I just think this lineup has had some inconsistency with all of the injuries and with the call-ups and all of that.
Yeah, I
Um,
do want to point out, and I know you said they're playing better together, but so Furry, he averages 13 minutes. He plays penalty kill. He has 15 points and he's a -10. I mean, if he is really playing well enough to be on the top line, they're in trouble. Like, that's
well,
basically my
yeah,
point. But that's why
That
I
that is
would just
and that is my point too, is
I
that the
know.
lineup is not ideal. I think we're just
No,
getting there from different places.
but I think we are. But the thing is, that's where you still have to kind of go to the well and just say, okay, you other guys, I'm going to give you this responsibility and you have to come through. Because I mean, I don't think Furry's a developing player. I think he is what he is, and he's okay. I mean, he's not an older guy or anything. He's a young guy, but I just feel like if you're telling other teams that's your top line, yeah, that ain't great.
No, but, there is new blood in the organization. Unfortunately, they're not playing for the Phantoms on the ice right now, and I wanna get into that aspect of what's going on with the team coming up next. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day, bringing you the biggest stories without the screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So we mentioned this on yesterday's show, Russ, about Hunter McDonald, who, of
Yeah.
course, is a 6'4" defenseman that management has been very excited about. His first pro game was Saturday night after signing a PTO at the AHL level for the rest of the season. Left after, I believe, 2 shifts after getting hurt. The word on the street is that it is some sort of shoulder injury, but upper body for sure. And brutal, just absolutely brutal. I got a feel for the kid. Entire Flyers management was in the press box for that, for his debut. And to go down like that, just what a nightmare.
Yeah, I don't know what his injuries were over at Northeastern, but I'm going to guess it probably was that shoulder. And he missed a lot of time. Like, he only played 23 games. So I don't know if
Mhm.
we could even project him to come back.
Yeah, I don't know either. And the last I saw, the team had not said anything. But I think,
And that was days
there's so
ago. So that's
yeah,
that's not a great sign.
no, no, but we'll see what happens with him. But I'm not expecting anything there. The other interesting factor is that we talked about a couple of new guys signed to AHL PTOs and contracts for next season.
Right.
So, slightly different situation there. Tyler Gratton and Jacques Bucco were signed, both with Penn State connections. We talked about that. Those two guys were assigned to Reading immediately and played the full 3 games in Reading this past weekend. Tyler Gratton had a goal and assist. Bucco had 3 assists. So pretty solid start for them in Reading, but
They could use
I'm
him in
I'm not
Lehigh.
sure
Why
what
are
the
they putting him in Reading?
well, that's an interesting question that I do not have an answer to, but I'm wondering if they just wanted to get them in the lineup right away and couldn't do it immediately. But I would certainly
Because the
hope.
lineup's too stacked? Is that what you're I mean, come
Listen,
on.
not too stacked,
I
just
know. I'm
like,
being a jerk.
you know, yeah, it's just in terms of getting practices in and all of that. But they did want to see them have games over the weekend. So maybe they'll come up to Lehigh for practices this week. Who knows? But I am intrigued by that situation as well.
I mean, no, yeah, I understand why you're intrigued. No offense to Reading, they've had some playoff runs. Get them in Lehigh. It's up to the coaching staff to figure out what lines to put them on and get. So they have all week to practice. You know what I mean? They're only playing Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or Friday, Saturday, Sunday, whatever. That's when they play. There's plenty of practice time. You're trying to tell me you can't get these guys inserted? I hope that was the only games they play for Reading. I don't there's a perfect opportunity to get fresh legs into a team that really needs to stay above water.
Yeah, and that's what I was not clear on why that decision was made. But hopefully they do get some AHL games in this season.
This
And
season, this week. Forget this
well,
season. It's a
yes.
little more
Listen,
urgent than that. It's more urgent than
um,
that.
it is. But we do only have 2 games this week. It's Friday and Saturday.
Right, so get them in
Um,
there. Let's go.
yeah, yep. So we'll see if they have shown up to practice this week and what's going on there. In the meantime, I do think that there have been a couple of good things to come out of the last couple of weeks. Tanner Lazinski is
Yeah.
playing well. Very happy for him. Like whatever
Too bad
happens with
Schwartz
him.
doesn't like him, but I like
Yeah,
Lazinski a lot.
me too. He had a goal and 3 assists for the weekend. And I think they're doing a little bit better about staying out of the penalty box. They only had 5 power plays against for the weekend.
That's good.
Their PK wasn't great, but at least they were staying out of the
Right.
box, which was a good thing. Except there was just one situation which drove me absolutely insane in Sunday's game, which I really firmly believe they could have been in. But in the 3rd period, they're trying to come from behind. They're down a goal, right? And they just get into some nonsense in front of the net and a little fisticuffs happen. They take an extra roughing call and go on the PK, right? When they're down a goal. And they were
Right.
actually pressing pretty decently at
Right.
that point. And then, of course, they let a goal in, right?
Yeah,
And so
and that
that
takes the steam out of them.
it takes the steam out of them and it creates a 2-goal margin
Right.
in the 3rd period. And so
Yeah.
those are the kind of mistakes that I don't like when they happen.
Yeah,
But
that's tough.
yeah, just in that one situation. But I think, largely they've been doing a little bit better with that. And even Garrett Wilson to some extent, even though Wilson was part of the problem in that one situation.
Yeah.
You can't hold him back all the time. Uh, there. But I do think that, the comeback win on Wednesday was really good. It was just like that game against Bridgeport really bummed me out. They gave up a bad odd man rush on the game winning goal. And they, to be fair, they had to play most of the game with 5D because that's when McDonald was out.
Right.
So you can't fault them entirely, but when you're trying to come from behind in the 3rd period and you only get 8 shots on goal,
Yeah, that's
like
not the way
that's
to
not
beat a
enough.
bad team. No.
Yeah, it's not enough. So some mixed results again, but again, still in the playoff spot.
Right.
So hopes are there for this
Yep.
team. And like I said, they are at Syracuse on Friday. They are at Wilkes-Barre Scranton on the road again on Saturday. They play again a week from today at Hershey. So that's going to be a pretty decisive game.
Yeah.
We'll talk about it next week for sure when we recap those two games we're talking about and see where the situation lies.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll see where they're heading.
All right, go Phantoms, please. I adore you, and I really need you to make the playoffs this year to get some guys some experience. But that will do it for today's show. We will, of course, recap the Rangers game and get to your mailbag questions and more. You can get those questions in via Twitter at Locked On Flyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail or comment over on YouTube. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. It's also available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus national shows covering every league like Locked On NHL. It is available on the free Fire TV channels app. I'm Rachel. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology, SPORTSOLOGY.
Have a great day.